Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is April 13th, 2018, Friday the 13th. And we are doing our weekly Country Roads Report with, of course, our friend Winston Shrout. Welcome, Winston. How are you today?
Well, doing pretty good things going up in your part of the country. Is it warming up any?
It's starting to, thankfully. It's actually 63 degrees outside.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeehaw.
Yeah.
Actually,
Don't say something may have arrived.
it's supposed to be like 78 today, and tomorrow's supposed to be in the 80s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's how it is here. You just kind of skip over. You have spring for one day. So,
Sounds like a picnic on the beach to me.
yeah, and that's what we're going to do. We're definitely going to do that. We're celebrating some family events this weekend, so it'll be fun. But we're going to focus today on
Oh,
more technology. Isn't that right, Winston? And we're going to talk about trusts and some trouble areas. And I think Winston's going to be clarifying some difficulties that some people may have with regarding this technology. So I'll hand it over to Winston.
yeah, from time to time, I get emails or people contact me, and they're always asking about trust. They like to set up trust, and they're asking me, about common law trust or living trust or all kinds of different trusts. And so when they ask me the questions about some of that stuff, first thing I want to ask of them is, well, what do you know about trust? And generally speaking, they don't. They just know that if they go over here to this person or this attorney or whatever, they're going to write a trust, and they keep their fingers crossed as to the outcome of that trust. And trusts are good. Trusts are good. But I thought today we would talk a little bit about the basic concepts so that people would have an idea when they get into something like that, what they're actually getting into, so that if they go and have an attorney or something like that write a trust for them, that they would at least have the basic ideas in their mind, so when they start to read what they just paid for, maybe they have a little bit better understanding of it. And then also we want to get into some of the areas of implied trust, because all these things, as we had mentioned, when we moved from common law in 1933 with the change, we moved into operation of law. And that's a whole different concept. And as a result of operation, then we get into constructive trust, we get into implied trust and all these kind of things, which cause people a lot of grief because they're thrown into a situation and they're expected to perform, and they can't make heads or tails out of what's going on. So I thought today, more than anything else, that we would spend some time with concepts and not particulars. And recently, we did put out another DVD on trust that people might want to consider, so they can go over it and over it, and get the ideas in their mind. Because again, if you allow somebody to write a trust for you and you don't know what's in it, you're really sticking your neck out. You really are. And so a lot of people are, for instance, people get involved in mortgages, then all of a sudden they set up a deed of trust. And like we had mentioned on some of our other interviews, it puts you in a very poor position in regards to that deed of trust. And so we had talked, in times past about how to correct some of those particular problems with deed of trust. If you really don't like it at all, just revoke it. But so again, if people would like to consider, the concept of trust, and they're all around us. It's just like we've gone into trust. But unless you understand what's going on with that, then you're going to make mistakes. and you're going to scratch your head and say, "Hey, what just happened? I don't understand what just happened here," and you don't. And that's why we put out that DVD. So today we'll go over some of the thought process behind some of those concepts, so the people, at least have an idea what you're getting into, as they consider some of these things.
Yeah, I remember the mortgage, the death um,
Death pledge.
pledge. Yeah, the death pledge. Well, we all remember that, Winston.
Well, that's exactly what you're doing when you get involved in the deed of trust. You're actually pledging the collateral in question, which is the house or the property. You're pledging that as the security, for the trust. You're doing it. And people get into that and scratch their head and say, "I wonder what the heck's going on with this." And so that's why we had pointed out a little bit, previously, about some of those circumstances, so people would simply know what you're getting into. And if you don't like it, most people don't, then some of the ways that some of those positions could be corrected or done away with, you're choosing. And so, the preferred method is to correct it, because, when you correct it, it opens up other opportunities for recovery. And so anyway, we might review some of that if it comes back up a little bit. But first I wanted to do a little discussion here. Maybe I'll screen share, because we want to do a little bit of history to show people, what it is we've managed to become involved in.
Okay. It's important to understand it, for sure.
Yeah. 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 Now this is a little article. I think I wrote it. I can't remember now. But anyway, the concept of sesticate.
Mm-hmm.
When you see the word sesticate, as it were, this is a situation, where someone is taking a beneficial interest. It's not an express trust in particular. It could be, but if you look back at history, because you recall the last time on our last report, we had gone into the Pleiadian perspective book by Morris Kwan Yin, and we were tracing some of the history of Mary, right. Mother Mary, and she had seen into the future about the disillusion of what's known as the Catholic Church and the organized religions, the Orthodox religions, and so forth, that had gotten so far astray that they simply had to be dissolved. And so we're right on the cusp of that very event happening right now.
Yes.
As you look at current events and some of the things that are happening, it caused her, I guess, a great deal of grief, or caused her to weep. And so anyway, I wanted to show just a little bit of history about that particular thing and how it went astray. See, people don't realize when we start to talk about the history of Christianity, it actually started with Constantine. Previous to that time, there was no such thing as Christian religion or the Christian church, but it became a political expediency. And so in consequence of that, there was a amalgamation, I guess you would say, of some of the concepts into what was known as the Christian church. And then some centuries later, they had wanted to proselyte, if I can use that word, the world, because they believed that they had a message that would be beneficial to everybody on the planet. And so that's when they come up with the concept of a universal or Catholic church. Now that word Catholic it means basically universal, or I would guess in our particular case, planetary. And so that was the desire, because they believed they had a message that would be good for people, that would, make a good change in their life. And so they wanted to proselyte. Now, because this particular church was created by Constantine, who was the Roman emperor, it became the Roman Catholic Church. As I've mentioned in times past, there are actually 7 Catholic churches. I was working with a fellow. I was appointed his nuncio, and he was a bishop in the Catholic Church of Antioch. Yeah, and so ever so often they have a get together, a meeting of all the heads of the 7 Catholic churches. Certainly, the number 1 seat is the bishop that comes from Avalon. And actually, as far as creation or I don't know, hierarchy, the bishop, the first bishop, is the one from Avalon, and then the Pope or the bishop from Rome is actually 3rd or 4th seat as far as the hierarchy of those 7 churches go. But of course, the Roman Church has become predominant for various reasons historically. And so, when people consider the Catholic Church, they're really talking about the Roman Catholic Church, and do not consider the other 6. So, I just want to make that a little bit of information for people. So, in reference, in the Pleiadian perspective, where Mary was talking about the consequence in the future, excuse me, of the Catholic Church, I would suppose that she is making reference to the Roman Catholic Church. The others doesn't seem that they have gone that far astray from the original teachings and so forth. I can't say, because I'm not conversant with all the different ones. Mm-hmm. But in any event, I want to give a little bit of the history of the Roman version, because of the evolution that happened, certainly with the false donation of Constantine in, I think, 751 AD. There arose some real problems, and that was the problem that arose was that the Pope could not be questioned as to anything. Because with the donation of Constantine, they claimed that Constantine had given the Pope, some kind of authority, which was above question and reproach. In other words, he's always right, you're always wrong, because he speaks for God. And so God's never wrong, so the Pope's never wrong, and so he can't be questioned. You see, and so of course that's a false premise. But people bought into it, I guess. And then for about another 2.5, 3 centuries, there was another evolution, which basically was called the Roman pagan evolution into the church, whereas many of the concepts of paganism were implemented into the church. And so basically that's what we have today. So as you look at this history that we're fixing to go into here, when we start to talking about some of these trust and cestacate situations and the logic behind it, then you'll start to see the problems that have developed because of the Roman Catholic Church, as it were, which was invaded first by the donation of Constantine and later on by the pagan cult. So anyway, I could just see, why Mary would be so disappointed. in the results of the evolution or the devolution, if you want to call it that, of the situation. And again, today being Friday the 13th, we go back in history to Jacques de Molay and Friday the 13th, but we won't get into any of that. I think we've talked about that in the past. So anyway, it's just kind of fun, historically to look at some of these things so we can draw conclusions about how we would live our lives. What will I do in relationship to some of these situations, that we're having to deal with because of, there's a whole lot of problems that come up. Anyway, let's kind of just go into this article a little bit. It's on the screen, I take it.
Yes. You can write at it.
All right, so again, we've talked about this a little bit in the past. In 1213, King John of England basically ceded all his kingdom to the Vatican. That seemed like a pretty good deal for the Vatican, as it obtained title to the land at no risk to itself. The Vatican had no investment in the situation, but yet they became the beneficiaries, or those who got the benefit from the situation, which is a typical Sestake Vi situation. Of course, we got the Knights Templars and everybody else all mad about it, and so eventually we had in 1215 we had the Magna Carta. But anyway, in 1213, I guess King John felt like maybe he was a sinner, or he was convinced that he was a sinner, and so the Pope, granted John remission of sin if he would cede over to the Vatican the kingdom. So anyway, now the Vatican, makes a claim of ownership of the land that had been conquered by the empire. And so we have these things going on. So eventually in 1455 AD, there was something called Romanus Pontifex, which was a testamentary deed or a will. Anyway, it placed all the land that King John had allegedly turned over. Anyway, they put it into an estate, and a crown land trust was created. So all this land, as it were, that John ceded to the Vatican and now became a part of the Crown Land Trust. So they went a little bit farther with their logic, and then we have this other thing here. I don't know that I can pronounce that thing there. Pronounce it however you will.
Attorney.
Yeah, I have a hard enough time with English. I sure in heck can't do much with Latin.
Regis. It's either
anyway,
Attorney Regis. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Whatever.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
All right.
Anyway, so in 1481 AD, there was another testamentary deed or will, which in essence made the people slaves. In other words, because people are made of land, we've talked about this in the past, the people are just walking and talking real estate because we come up out of the land, and so we're creations, from the dust of the earth, like the scripture refers to. So, in essence, with this new testamentary deed or will, then the Vatican claimed ownership of people. Now, if that don't make slaves of us all, I don't know what does. Anyway, this estate came under what was called the Crown of Aragon, and the trust that resulted from this was called a commonwealth. So a commonwealth is a part of a trust. For instance, some of the early colonies, Virginia colony became a Commonwealth of Virginia. And originally, what's now Kentucky was a part of Virginia. So when Kentucky was admitted into the Union States in 1795, it actually came in as a commonwealth, which gives you the idea that it was actually not sovereign, but it was actually a part of the Virginia Trust,
Hmm.
Virginia Commonwealth, which again was part of the of England. So we have this mixture of jurisdictions going on all the time, which causes a great deal of confusion. And so, we just need to know the history of it, so when we see the words appearing, then we know what the circumstance is. Is New Jersey a commonwealth? Do you
I don't know.
know?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I know for a fact Virginia was.
Probably not. It's corporation.
Yeah, perhaps the Carolinas,
Corporation.
but this concept of commonwealth has spurred some writers to do the research. Some researchers have written about this situation,
Hmm.
in as much as they're saying that the United States has always been a colony of England, based on the Commonwealth concept, with Virginia and some of the other areas that were designated as Commonwealth, because again, it's a part of this testamentary deed trust here, this Crown of Aragon, and the trust that was called a Commonwealth. Commonwealth. You have any questions about that or any observations?
I mean, obviously, like you said, you could see that that made us all slaves. And of course, if the church had a lien on our souls due to baptism, then, you
Well,
know,
we're fixing to get into
I
that
can't
part
believe
too.
anybody agreed to this, but again, you couldn't question the Pope. So there you have it.
Yet we
Getting to,
acquiesce to it.
yeah.
Now some protesters, such as Martin Luther
Hmm.
and some of the others, even though they weren't trying to break away from the church per se, they were protesting. They were objecting to the way things were being handled. And certainly the bishops of those other 6 Catholic churches uh, do not acquiesce to this concept, not at all.
Yeah.
This is a concept that was developed after the invasion of the Roman pagan cult,
Mm.
which occurred about 1000 AD. So, with that in mind, people just simply need to know the history, so they would choose to participate or not to participate. Anyway, going a little bit further with the history, it says next we have the convocation of 1537 AD. This is an interesting thing now, as the souls of men are claimed through baptism. Now, again, this gets back again to the concept of original sin. The concept is that the children are born in sin. Now,
That's just
let me
flawed to
just state,
begin with.
that is a purely bullshit doctrine,
Absolutely.
purely. But if people buy into that, then they think little children need to be baptized, and it's absolutely not true. Absolutely not. Anyway, when a
But,
man or a woman
but
or a
Winston,
baby, what's that?
I'm sorry, they didn't really believe this. This was just how they were slowly but surely,
It's
you know,
scam.
yeah, it was scamming people. But they
Yeah.
knew that. They really didn't believe it. They were just trying to
Well,
make everybody's
the
take
thing that generated it was the false concept
yeah.
that children are born in sin, that their parents sinned by having intercourse and producing a baby,
Nice.
and this crazy. I mean, it is so ridiculous. I can't imagine why thinking people even buy into such a theory.
Well, they weren't really thinking much, I guess, back then.
Well,
Or they weren't allowed to. But, well, look, I mean, look, it's not like we haven't been, threatened with, death for, you know,
yeah,
we, it's
yeah.
not been that easy. I don't blame people. It's sad, but it's people. look, if you're trying to keep a society organized, or you'd have chaos. So how do you do it? So how do you
Yeah.
keep a society peaceful of people who have forgotten their spiritual past, forgotten whatever they've learned in past lives, and they're starting completely fresh? Of course, they're going to make mistakes, and but they are trying to follow these laws because they threaten you. I mean,
Yeah.
and they believed that the people who were threatening them had more power over them. So
Yeah.
it's all about mind control, and it's all about manipulation, you know.
Yeah.
So okay, but we'll keep going.
All right. So when a man or a woman or a child was baptized, their name was recorded and registered on the books of the church. There's the receipt for the remission of sins. The receipt is held on the books,
Mm,
and there's where the claims are made. Now, since the concept was that with the baptism performed by the church, all of one's sins were washed away, and the soul was thus prepared to ascend to God as being pure. Therefore, the church had a lien on the soul. That's the concept.
what a
Now,
trap!
that's obviously not true,
Yeah, what a trap!
but it is a trap.
Hmm.
It is a trap.
That's a trap.
And so, a certain energetic connection
Mm.
is made, when they participate in those rituals.
Okay, you're talking about the baptism. The
Yeah.
baptism. Okay. So can you elaborate a little bit more for our viewers on
Well, people go back and say, well, Winston, you're cuckoo. Jesus was baptized. Okay. Yes, he was.
that? Hmm.
But what baptism was John the Baptist offering? Obviously, he wasn't baptizing anybody into a church.
Mm.
And so John's baptism was baptism into the kingdom of God. Baptism into the kingdom of God. Obviously, Jesus wasn't baptized for remission of sins because he had none.
Right. Now, if anyone really thought about that, they'd, be asking that question. Like, why would then Jesus be needing to be baptized if
Yeah, as an
exactly,
example, but
exactly.
John's baptism was a baptism into the kingdom
Right.
because John the Baptist and Jesus and some of the others were Essenes. They
Yeah.
were members of the Qumran community. And so people need to understand a little bit about what happened on that occasion.
I think it's been pronounced Essenes as well. I don't
Yeah,
know. N-E-S,
Essene.
right. Hmm.
I say Essene. It's the way I say it.
Well, that's okay. It's just for people who might be familiar with another pronunciation. That's all. I'm not sure which is right. I don't know if there was a
Who
right or
cares?
a
I
wrong.
wasn't there. I
Yeah.
haven't asked any of them, so I don't know. But that's fine. Wait,
Well,
however you want to say it, that's fine.
well, I might have been there,
All
but
right. So at this point, so now the church has a lien on the land
hmm.
and the people, the physical people that come up out of the land,
Please.
and the souls which give the movable dirt. And so they pretty well locked everything in
What a deal.
as they suppose.
Mm.
But again, the only effect it has is when you acquiesce to it.
Ah, okay.
You volunteer into it. And we do find that a lot of the rising generation have renounced that. They say, no, we're not participating in that. They renounce it. And so the effects of this process here, this being
Hmm.
developed over the centuries and so forth, the rising generation, just like Mary predicted in that Pleiadian perspective that we looked at. Many of the people that are coming up now simply reject it and said, no, 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 we don't believe that. We don't participate with it.
Right.
We reject that lie and that fraud. And so we see increasing numbers who have taken that position. So what does that do to all these trusts and claims on land and claims on people and claims on souls? What does that do?
Voids it. Makes it
Yeah,
null.
it breaks it.
Null.
It breaks that connection and nulls it. That's exactly
Right.
right. So again, that's an individual choice of people. Uh, so we can go on. So when we talk about a universal concept, people on the planet are rejecting it. Now, certainly the Buddhist religions, the Hindus, and certainly the Muslims, are not buying into that. Now, they have their own problems in some respects, but
Sure.
they're certainly not buying into this other BS about all these trusts and everything. Anyway, we're just watching. We're just watching the population on the planet, how they act, what they do, and so forth. To see what comes of it. Anyway, again, with the concept of a sestake situation, it's for the beneficial use of property. So the Roman Catholic Church wants the beneficial use of the land, the people, and their souls. That's what they're doing. See, so that's why we call it a sestake situation. All right, so the king still had the beneficial use of the land, the people. So we have the Commonwealth of England as a part of the which one was it? Of the Crown of Aragon.
Right, Crown of Aragon.
Trust. So that's how we set up. Now, like I say, in my own particular case, my home state of Kentucky, that my dirt came out of, my body came from. Anyway, came into the Union in 1795, but it was a commonwealth because it had come from the Commonwealth of Virginia. So in essence, then, when I came into the world, the Commonwealth of Kentucky claimed my body and soul back to the Commonwealth of England through the Sestake Act of 1539. Back to all these deals all the way back to 1213. Now, when my birth was registered, the state registrar issued a receipt called a birth certificate. So the title, there was a title created to my body. It was created by the state of Kentucky, or the Commonwealth of Kentucky, which is the name in all capital letters. So that's the deed to this dirt right here you're looking at. And hence started to administer the estate, which included the body as involved in a sestake trust. That's how all these things started. Now, when Winston was baptized into a state chartered church, again, I was not involved per se with the Roman Catholic Church, but the church I was baptized into was chartered in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And this is the basis of the state acting as the beneficiary of the labors of the real man in a sestake situation, with the state being the beneficiary. Later, this entity named Winston gave an unqualified signature on an SS5 form to set up the sestake situation known as the Social Security Trust, which is, again, is all a part of the same thing, because after that, the Social Security /IRS /IMF /United Nations took the beneficial use of the contributions made to the all capital letter Winston Shrout Trust, which is a trust, again, registered in Puerto Rico. You see how all these things are tied together.
Right.
See, that's what we're saying here. So now we have the Vatican, Commonwealth of England, Commonwealth of Kentucky, Social Security Administration, which, by the way, is owned by the Queen of England, all claiming the beneficial use of all the profits, proceeds, and fixtures created by the labor of the slave known as Winston. That's how they're doing it.
Mm.
Now we're going to get into some of this here just in a moment, but there's a concept here: inequity. When a party has possession of a thing to which they have no legal right, then they are construed to be the trustee of the thing. So if you follow the formula that they've put forward here, do I have the legal right to this body?
No,
Legal right? No,
no,
you don't.
no. But you're the trustee of it. So you get to say, you get to take control of these accounts they created.
No, no.
As the trustee?
We're going to go into trust structure in a moment.
Okay, so we'll wait for that.
But see, and we will go into that.
Mhm.
But in essence, because I'm in possession
Mm.
of something that I do not have a legal right to, then I'm construed as the trustee of that thing, not the beneficiary.
Mm. Right.
The beneficial interest is held by what?
The
The
one who has,
Commonwealth of Kentucky, the Commonwealth of
right.
Virginia, the Commonwealth of England, all the way back to this Crown of Aragon.
What a scam. Who thought this up?
Oh God, I don't know.
What a scam.
That's all it is. It's a big scam. And so when you wake up and start to realize this, are there things you can do to correct this? And as Solutions in Commerce,
Yes.
that's what I've been trying to do for the last number of years, is to show people how to correct that very problem. And like I say, our most recent production is the DVD on reclaiming your status and assets. Your asset, your body, and what the body produces. But what is your status? Are you still the trustee, or are you the beneficiary of the product that comes from the use of this body?
Here we go.
That's the question. That's the question everybody has to look at. Because again, because of the legalities, because of the fictions,
Fiction.
because of the false doctrine, then we have fallen into this trap. And so at Solutions in Commerce, my goal has been to try to show people how to recover from the mistakes that we've made in the past and get back in control of your body and the products, proceeds that come from it. Okay, go ahead.
But don't you think that it's the obligation of the church to correct this now that I know they're benefiting from it, they're the beneficiaries, but
no, they have to be destroyed.
I think that I'm surprised this has not been corrected previously, but I guess I'm not, on one hand,
we're
because
working on
so much power, there's so much power and money that they, I'm sure there's a huge network, a huge wall. Oh yeah, there is a wall built around the Vatican. That's right. There's a big army of people in the Vatican to protect this. Oh yes, of course, of course.
Why do you think they call the Jesuits generals? Because they control the militaries on the planet. Now the Pentagon is breaking away from that at present. They're not taking orders from a Jesuit general anymore.
Good.
We have a protester as the commander-in-chief.
Right, exactly. No, he's fighting very hard, working very hard to correct this stuff. This is trying to be corrected.
Yeah, and there's a lot of resistance. Like I say, here, I don't know, about a month ago, they tried to kill me. They did, and I was rescued by the Lion people. But it was that very element that was trying to destroy me. But it didn't work. I'm still sitting here talking and still moving forward. So anyway, I just wanted to get down to the root of the situation, so that people would have a certain amount of comprehension of what the problem has been, and then a little bit more about, what can be done about it. Because again, you can't fix a problem if you don't know what the problem is. I mean, if you go to the doctor, what's the first thing the doctor does? Sets you down and says, okay, tell me what the symptoms are. I mean, if you go in, if you're bleeding, you got your eye poked out or something, that's pretty obvious. So you go into emergency triage and all those kind of things. But if you go to the doctor, sit down, the doctor says, well, what's going on? He said, well, I don't feel well. The doctor says, well, what are the symptoms? So he takes your blood pressure, he does a blood draw, he does an analysis of your blood and all those kind of things, so he can find out what the problems are. Same thing here. We look around the country, we look around the planet, we say, oh my goodness, look at all these problems. So in our situation here in the United States, it's emergency. As a matter of fact, the commander-in-chief put out a national emergency back in December. It's triage, So when you find somebody along the road and they're bleeding to death, man, you got to jump right in. You got to jump right in and do something to save their life. And the former administrations put us on the brink of destruction. And that information is now coming out. If people look on the internet about what the former administrations had done, and then right now the country's in triage.
Yeah, and that's a warning.
This is an emergency.
It's going to be very serious. There's already some leaks about this Hillary Clinton video, and I'm going to tell you, folks, just prepare yourself for the worst, because it is the most horrible. If it's accurate, then these leaks are going to shock you to your core. But they are the truth, and if they are the truth, they need to come out, and we need to know the truth. So this former administration we had was really working against not only what I believe is the United States, but of course I believe against humanity itself. So
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's caused a lot of turmoil in the country. For folks who haven't listened to Jerome Corsi's explanation, please go and listen to that, because some years ago it was known to him that some of the military generals had planned a military coup because of what Obama was doing.
Right.
And like he pointed out, it was actually Donald Trump that talked them out of it and said, look, if you won't do that, then I agree to step in and become the president, and then we can work together so that it doesn't cause national panic. And so go listen to what Jerome Corsi talks about, because he is speaking truthfully from personal, firsthand knowledge. And that ought to put a shiver up and down everybody's spine.
Yeah.
Well, like I've pointed out in some of our other interviews, military intervention operates on a different plan. And if military has to intervene, it's war.
Sure.
It's not politics anymore, it's war. Because the rules of engagement for the military are entirely different,
right,
than what we normally deal with. And so go listen to what Dr. Corsi has to say on that business. Maybe on your news, you can point to some of those interviews where Jerome Corsi does in fact reveal that. So anyway, we're slowly but surely getting things put together. A lot of things happening behind the scenes, that we're certainly not aware of. This QAnon entity is putting out hints and clues, for people to consider. And so we watch these things unfold as they go along. So people should be encouraged.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to discourage anybody. I'm not like Chicken Little and the sky's not falling in, but we are making the corrections. And we've talked about some of the corrections. I've helped a little bit in the background, with some of these corrections. I have,
Mm-hmm.
as far as I've been able. What little bit I could do, I think may have had a huge impact on some of these things and other things that we're not exposing at the present time. So we're still moving forward. We're still moving forward. We're not going backwards. So people should be encouraged. All right. With all those things said, let's talk about some of these other items that I wanted to bring to people's attention here. So we'll go down to, let's see. All right. So let's talk about the usual elements of a trust. And this would be more in the line of what we call an express trust, or a trust that perhaps would be written down, recorded, or not recorded, up to you. But here are some of the elements that would be necessary to create a functional working trust. Number one, what has to be stated is what is the intent of forming this trust. There has to be a reason for it. Now, a typical trust would be, grandparents or even parents that want to set up a trust, maybe to provide for children for their education or for other things. And so that they would set up this trust, but it would be expressed in the trust what it is that the intention is. And so let's say, for instance, the grandparents would say, well, we want to set up a trust to provide for our grandchildren's education. And so they would have the different provisions and things in there that would qualify a grandchild as a beneficiary of that trust, for the purpose of education, not to take the money and go and blow it on drugs, rock and roll, and gambling and all the rest of that stuff. So the intent is ever so important, when you put together a trust. And then they have to, then they specify what is the trust property. Now let's go back again to the grandparents and the education. So the grandparents would set up bank accounts that would contain money that could be used for the intent, when the intent being, the grandchildren's education. Okay. So that would be the trust res, as we call it, or what property the trust would actually have control over. So the property would be the bank accounts with the money in it, in this particular instance. Now, they need to designate who the parties are to the trust, and generally, there's 3 or 4 different positions. Certainly the most important one is the grantor of the trust. In other words, grandpa, setting up this trust for his grandchildren. So he would be the grantor or the trustor. Now, there's another element there, which is called the settlor. And the settlor is actually the party responsible for bringing the trust res, or the asset of the trust, into the trust. Because if you have a trust that has no asset, you don't have a trust. There has to be a trust asset in order to be a trust. Now, when we start talking about implied trust and all that kind of stuff here in a minute, or resulting trust, then you'll see that. But in any event, so let's say grandpa says, well, I want to set up a trust for my grandchildren's education. He opens up bank accounts and there's no money in them. Well, there's no trust. There has to be something there in order to facilitate or create a trust. So that's the job of the settlor. Now, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that we make a distinction between the grantor and the settlor, which you did, but I want to just emphasize that because I think some people are using that term interchangeably.
Well, the settlor very well could be the grantor.
Okay.
Now, if you'll look at, for instance, the deed of trust, you know, where you, the, you know, buyer of the home or whatever, are called the grantor, are you not also the settler? Yeah, because you put up the collateral, you know, for the deed of trust, which is the house. So in that case, certainly the grantor and the settler are the same party.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say, for instance, you know, the grandparents say, okay, I want to set up this trust as the grantor, and I have a business over here. I've got a, you know, corporation or a business that's making money, and let's say a certain percentage of the profit from that business will be put into the trust accounts for the grandchildren. So again, the business in that case would be the settler. You see what I mean?
Okay.
So the grantor and the settler could be the same party, but not necessarily the same party.
So in other words, so it's like the origin of the funds. So you're saying that if you have a particular bank account and you set it up, would you set that up as a custodian to hold the trust, or would that be a custodial account, or would that be in
Well,
your name?
we'll get into what the responsibilities of a trustee are to
Okay.
manage
Okay.
that. So, but we haven't gotten that far
Okay.
yet.
No problem.
All right. So now that we have established the grantor, the settler, the trust, property, the asset, the res, so forth. Now let's talk about the administration
Hmm.
of the trust, and that falls to a trustee. Now, the trustee would be nominated uh, as such, and the what we would call the trust indenture would specify the responsibilities of the trustee. Now, key here, you have to realize the trustee is a paid position in the trust. If you don't pay the trustee, then it's not operating correctly. Now, the trustee may forego any kind of remuneration for his services. That's up to the trustee. But if you appoint or nominate someone as trustee, then a provision to remunerate them for their service has to be made. It has to. Otherwise, you know, there's no trustee. Now, let's talk about the beneficiary. The beneficiary is the party for whom the trust was created. In other words, the grandchildren in this case. So they're the beneficiary. So there is a certain established relationship between the trustee and the beneficiary of the trust. Now, we have a 90-10 split. The trustee, you know the old saying, you know, 90% is, possession is 90% of the law.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about the relative positions of the trustee versus, you know, the beneficiary.
Mm. I can imagine there's been a lot of contention over this, this trustee.
Well, there is. We have trustees that try to usurp
Right.
what ought to go to the beneficiaries,
Exactly.
and that's what happens with these cesticate situations we talked about, you know, when we first started.
Right.
And that is that they try to push things into a cesticate situation so they can control the assets, which is the people, the souls, the land, as they've tried to do. But in a trust, we have, excuse me, we have the two situations,
Mm-hmm.
and that is it's a 10% versus 90% control. In essence, the trustee has the 10%, which means that he has the control of the legal title to the trust asset. For instance, he would be signatory on the bank accounts. And so that would put the trustee into an administrative position according to the trust law, the trust indenture.
Mm-hmm.
So he has certain responsibilities for which he's remunerated
Mm-hmm.
according to how the trust is set up, the trust indentures. but the beneficiary has what we have, the equitable or the possessory right in the trust, which means that the grandkids can call upon the trustee to pay the tuition and books.
Right.
Yeah. So the beneficiary would say to the trustee, okay, I've got $1,000 tuition owed over here for next semester. It's also going to cost me $300 for books. The dorm is going to charge this much. I need this much for food and so forth. So then it's the duty of the trustee to see to those things. And so, a smart trustee would simply not just hand over the cash to the kid, but they would contact the college, say, okay, I'm the trustee for so-and-so, what's the bill? Trustee would pay it. What's the dorm rate? What's the dorm charge? They would pay that. They might find out what the cost. In other words, a trustee is an active part of what's happening with the beneficiary. And so typically the beneficiary would not go to the trustee and say, hey, I need $2,000 next semester, and the trustee would just turn over $2,000 in cash. That would be stupid. Now again, a trust properly set up would not allow for any such thing. All right. But anyway, so you have this as far as the responsible parties in this matter. You have the trustee, who's the administrator, and who can appoint other administrators as time goes on. But anyway, the legal title is vested in the trustee, and then the use or the possessory equitable right, falls to the beneficiary. Do you have any questions about those things?
No, and I think that you're using the example of a child, but when you're dealing with like, let's just say it's not a child, and it's for an organization or for a family or for, I guess you still have to have that trustee be prudent no matter what.
Of course. According to the trust law.
That trustee is huge. That trustee is very important. Oh, you just said something very interesting. According to trust law. So there's a separate law, which I knew.
Yeah, it's called a trust indenture. So when you set up your trust, you're going to have a list of what's expected. It's called the trust indenture, the trust law.
Yeah, I mean, so this is what I'm saying is, how do you enforce these things when there is a conflict of interest? Or let's just say
that's the duty of the trustee.
The trustee, but if the trustee has a problem, if the trustee is the one who you're having the problem with,
then the grantor fires him.
The grantor. I thought there was someone called protector. Is that another?
You call it whatever you want, but the grantor, in regards to this matter, in regards to this trust, the grantor or his assigns.
Okay.
So let's say, for instance, grandpa dies. Okay, now who's the grantor? Well, it should be provided for in the trust that if grandpa dies, then the father is now the grantor.
Okay.
And so the grantor, if you don't like what the trustee is doing, fire him and go bring somebody else in.
Okay, but there's got to be a courtroom that.
No, they don't.
So
this is all on the private side.
This is all on the private. These are terms I wanted to get out so our viewers understand. Okay, so this is on the private side. This is important to note. So if something were to happen, though, Winston, there is trust law, though. There is a court that will oversee trust matters, right?
If you have a problem that cannot be resolved, for instance, let's say the grantor fires the trustee, and the trustee goes and signs a bunch of checks and takes money out of the bank accounts. Now what? Then you would go to the civil authorities for theft and for fraud.
Right, but that's not in civil. That's not in civil.
Yeah, it would be. It'd be civil. It'd be civil. It'd be criminal, whatever. But I'm just saying,
okay.
if there is some crime committed,
I see,
within the trust, then yeah, you could resort to the civil authorities, whether it be civil or criminal.
Okay.
So there's ways to work these things. technically trusts are handled in equity, typically, because we use equity to enforce trust situations. In other words, what ought to be. And so we're not relying upon statutes, codes, and all those other things in regards to trust. And so, as part of that DVD I mentioned on the first, actually, there's two DVDs. One's about trust, and the other's about equity.
Okay.
That we had discussed in our Gardner seminar last fall, which we reproduced in the form of DVDs. Those two particular DVDs, the one on trust and the one on equity, go hand in hand. And probably really to get the real benefit from either of them, you should have both and study both of them.
So repeat those again. The two DVDs are, if you wouldn't mind just repeating it one more time for viewers.
I forgot the exact name of them, but the one is on trust and the other is on equity, because we use equity to enforce or to regulate trust. Yeah, just go on the website, the two ladies, or if you have a question about it, just call the office and ask the lady there, and she can put you on to it. So probably both of them, they're again at reasonable prices. We keep everything marked down so low. Matter of fact, I think there's a sale going on right now. People benefit from.
I think there's still we still using that coupon code, or no?
Yeah, you can, but not on a sale because it's already discounted.
Yeah. Okay. So
normally you can use the GoldFish, for a discount.
Okay. Yeah, folks, it's in the description section of the video, which we usually have in there. There is a coupon code in there that you can use on non-sale items. So that helps everything. Yeah, it's good. It's a nice code. It's generous. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we did, like I say, I'm still wearing blue jeans and flannel shirts. So,
Gotta keep the lights on.
If you think there's any great profits to be made from what I do, you'd be dead wrong.
Yeah, got to keep the internet going on this end too. So it's been a challenge lately. Our viewers, I'll tell you, it's very helpful.
It's a labor of love. That's why we do this.
That's right, folks.
Like I say, you're not going to get rich doing what we do.
It's reasonable, Winston. It's reasonable. So that's good. But that's what I wanted to kind of, it's a little bit more detailed, this information, but it is, like you said, this is not relying on statutes or code. This is important.
Yeah. It's a trust indenture. It's the law unto itself. Now, again, the other element I wanted to emphasize is a valid trust purpose. And so that kind of goes with the first element, which is intent, to create a trust. And so all those things would be written into the actual document that would create the express trust. So these are some of the things, that people would want to look to when they start to consider these things.
Research, now, exactly.
I wanted to go back and re-emphasize again what we had talked about in some of our previous conversations. And again, because those particular interviews have been knocked down off the internet for the time being, I want to go back and go through what the major problem is when we start to work in the public. And that is, everybody are still considered to be minors.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry, Winston. The internet is kicking out in and out a little bit. Could you repeat what you just said? I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. The main problem that people face in interfacing in the public is that they are still considered to be minors. And if you are a minor, then you are under the state custodial care. And you have to have an attorney to represent you. Okay? And now, see, going back to the common law concept, and that is the common law concept that someone was a child or a minor, and incompetent to handle their own affairs until they reach the age of 18 years. But once they reach the age of 18 years, they got to come out. They have to make a declaration that they are no longer a minor and that they are capable of managing their own affairs. And as the beneficiary of the public trust, they can go directly to the trustee instead of having to go through a custodian. See, a lot of the processes that we worked on over the years, the problem that we've been, we understood about beneficiary of the public trust. We understood about this, that, or the other. But the problem was that we were still considered minors.
Amazing.
And as such, we had to be under custodial care. And as such, when we go to court or wherever, we have to be represented by attorneys because we are incompetent. That's the logic that's being used against people.
Yeah.
And so, a 50-year-old man or woman might go into a court and start saying stuff, and the judge sitting there looking at it, and in their mind is saying, "Why am I listening to this dumb kid for?
Yeah.
This is a minor. This is an incompetent." And they treat you that way.
They absolutely do.
They treat you that way. But what happens when you come in with proof that you're not a minor? And that was one of the purposes why we put together that DVD on reclaiming your status and assets, so you could actually change your status and demonstrate that you are over the age of 18 years and not incompetent. Now, previously we had also talked about that affidavit of life, where we were demonstrating the same thing. That DVD we had referred to at that point was called Proof of Life.
Right.
And we create an affidavit with witnesses, with a blood thumbprint on the affidavit to demonstrate that we are over the age of 18 years, and we have witnesses who will state to that fact. And then in that DVD, we also talk about recovery on some things under the Sestakavai Act, and also the business with corpus juris secundum. So that's a real good DVD too for understanding. So that's what we're trying to do, is to push people to stop being kids, stop being minors,
right,
make declarations, make proof of it, so that you're not treated that way, and so you don't have to go through a custodian for your beneficial benefits, and you don't have to have an attorney to represent you in court. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes sense. But if you're going to do this and realize you're not going to have an attorney represent you in court, you better study that law of whatever you're going in there, because you're still responsible, because you made a declaration that you're capable of handling your own affairs, which means you need to study law and be aware that if you do find yourself in a courtroom,
you don't need to study statutes, because again, if you're operating with trust, then the trusts are enforced, or the jurisdiction of trust is under equity.
Right. It's different. I'm just talking about if you find yourself in a courtroom other than equity.
Yeah, you can turn it into equity pretty quick. But we're not going to get into that. So let's move forward a little bit further.
Okay.
With some with some of these concepts that seem to be causing people the very most problems.
Okay.
So let's go a little bit further here. Okay, now here is something that you just have to get in your mind, and that is, in any situation where the outcome is uncertain, a trust is created. Now, I'm not saying what kind of trust. I'm just saying that any time that the outcome is uncertain, a trust is created. So how do you deal with that trust? You know, what is your position in relationship to that trust? What are your expectations? You see. So anytime the outcome is uncertain, what are we into? We're into trust. We're into trust law. And how is trust? What is the jurisdiction that deals with trust?
Equity.
Equity.
Exactly.
Equity is basically what ought to be.
What?
And so again, equity goes to what's known as the court of conscience. And, you know, on one occasion, something might be appropriate. On an entirely different occasion, something else might be appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
But that's regulated by the court of conscience. Like I say, you know, Roger Ehrlich for years and years told us that. He said the highest court is the court of conscience. What ought you to do? See? And so we talked about some of that. I mean, we talked about, you know, Good Samaritan concepts, you know, to avoid, you know, some of the problems with statutes and all those kind of things. If you do things in good conscience,
Right.
you put yourself beyond, you know, statutory regulation, that kind of thing.
Right.
So again, you know, good common sense, reason, and logic. That's what equity is. Okay, so if you have that concept, then we'll move along. Well, let's just put it this way. You know, is there any situation that you run into where the outcome is not uncertain? Can you think of anything?
Where it's not uncertain?
Yeah.
Not really. Pretty much everything is uncertain.
Yeah, pretty much it is. Yeah, it pretty much is. And so you know, how important is it to understand these concepts we're talking about here? That's my point.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's the
really,
difference. It's the difference between freedom and slavery.
that's about what it is.
Right.
All right. Well, let's go on here then with some more. Okay, let's do this one.
Need a hot cup of tea there, Winston.
Yeah, I do really. I ain't got time to make one now. Let's see, where'd it go?
How's the weather over there on the West Coast?
Well, I looked outside. It's still got.
It's a little cloudy. The Chance of Meatballs. It's a movie. It's a kids show. It's a kids movie.
You
Still cloudy.
know.
The sun's
Now,
just starting to
here's
come
something that causes people just untold love problems
out.
because they just don't understand this concept. So let's hammer on this. I mean, let's get this straightened out right now.
All right.
Okay, anytime that you are in possession of something which you do not have the legal right to, then you're the trustee of that thing. All right. So you're walking down the street and you see a wallet laying out in the middle of the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
And so you go pick it up and you open up the wallet and let's say there's, you know, $100 in the wallet, but there's no identification, there's no driver's license, there's no way to know who the $100 belongs to. Okay, so what have you just become?
The trustee.
The trustee of that wallet and that $100.
Yeah.
Now, could you just go and spend that $100 just like you what you want to?
Well, what ought you do?
Well,
What
then you
ought you?
ought to take it to the local police.
That's
Make them the trustee of it. So you take the wallet into the police. You say, okay, I found this wallet laying on the sidewalk. There's no identification in it and so forth. There's $100 in there, so I'm turning it in.
mm-hmm.
So now who is the trustee of the wallet and the $100?
Right, the police.
The police are.
Yes.
Now, what's the position of the police? If no one comes and claims this wallet and $100, what will the police do?
Well, what do
After a period of time, they'll give it to you. And then you become the beneficiary of that $100, and then you can go spend it.
After how much?
But,
Yeah, I think they always hold on to them indefinitely, but
well, I'm just saying,
yeah.
this is the
Yeah.
way it used to be.
Okay.
But in any event, when you first pick up that wallet, you have no legal right to that $100 now, do you?
No.
So you're the trustee of it. And what ought you do? Well, you could very well go. You don't have to take it to the police. You could very well go and advertise in the legal section of the newspaper that I found a wallet with $100 in it laying on the sidewalk on Main Street, certain date and all these kind of things. My name is John. Here's my address. Here's my telephone number. If anybody can make a valid claim to this wallet and $100 and so forth, then please come and do it. If no one does show up with a valid claim for it within 30 days, then I'm taking possession. I'm gonna keep it.
This actually happened to me once.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was in the airport,
Yeah.
Newark Airport. Yeah, and me and my cousin, she was on a flight overseas, but she had a long wait over, and we were sitting there, and we found this wad of cash on the floor.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. We found a big wad of cash. It was like a few $100 in there, but it was only cash. There was no wallet.
Yeah.
And she's so funny because she's like, I didn't think there was anything we could do about it, And so she went around to all the people who were sitting at the table where we found it was in a food place,
Yeah.
and she's asking people if they dropped money. And you should see the reaction of all these people. Well, maybe I did, They couldn't. And they couldn't.
Did this happen in New Jersey?
Yeah, in Jersey. Of course it's in Jersey. And so all these people, there was like all these, staff, these airplane staff, and they're all thinking, they're all opening up their wallets. Oh, yeah, maybe I did lose some. Because nobody could tell us what the amount of cash was. So we ended up having to keep it and splitting it between ourselves because nobody was even honest.
Well, at least you could have done say that drinks are on the house.
I know. Well, it wasn't drinking time, but
I know. That's the thing.
True. Well, no, I mean, everybody already paid for their meal, but you're funny. It's funny because you don't know, what would you do exactly?
Yeah. Well, I'm just making that one little example to illustrate this particular concept here is that anytime you're in possession of something which you don't have the legal right to, then you're the trustee. Yeah. Now, let's ask the question, everybody needs to consider. Are you in possession of something that you don't have the legal right to? And if so, you're the trustee of that thing, aren't you? Indeed. So let's talk about what items that you might have in your possession that you don't have the legal right to. Let's use the example of your birth certificate and your Social Security card. Do you have the legal right to those two things? Typically, people don't.
No.
Now, if you are one of those typical ones who don't have the legal right to those things, what does that make you in regards to those items?
The beneficiary, rather.
Yeah, you're the trustee of those items. Now, what is the duty of a trustee in any trust? To settle all the debts of the trust. That's your duty, isn't it?
Yes, as the trustee.
Exactly.
Sorry, I thought the other one was a different question. Never mind. Go ahead.
Well, I haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay.
All right. So when a bill, let's say the electricity bill comes through the mail, what is the name on that electric bill?
It's going to be the name of the beneficiary.
No, it's not.
Because the trustee's responsibility.
It's going to be the title to the trust. It's going to be the name in all capital letters.
Oh, that's the one. Let's check.
Now, because you're in possession as a trustee, because you don't have the legal right.
Right, we're talking about a different trust thing. We're talking about,
Well,
we're
it's
not
the same
talking,
trust. It's
yeah,
the same
but,
concept.
but, okay.
So you're
We're
in
talking about
possession.
the hijacked one, the hijacked trust now. We're
You're in
talking about the
possession.
fake one.
Listen,
The fake one.
you're in possession of something you don't have the legal right to.
But that's based on fiction.
No, it's not. You're in possession of something that you don't have the legal right to, so you're the trustee of it. Okay?
Okay.
So are you in possession of the all capital letter name? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And so when they send a bill with the all capital letter name to you as the trustee, what's your responsibility?
To pay it.
To pay it out of the trust asset. What is the trust asset? Everything you do and work for, all your accounts and everything is part of the trust asset, because all of those assets are titled in what? The all capital letter name. That's how it really works. So people scratch their heads and say, why do I have to do these things? Because you're in possession of something that you don't have the legal right to. And in that situation, you're the trustee. You have to perform. Okay, now, could you come into legal possession of that thing?
Yes.
Well, of course you can.
Absolutely.
What do you think solutions in
commerce is all about? Of course.
We've been harping about for the last 14 years.
Hey, I answered correctly. Come on.
There you go.
Please is not a riddle. Make it the right answer. This one.
It's not a riddle. Yeah. So there's various ways that you can do that.
Yes.
Now, you know, in the beginning, we had talked about UCC financing statements so that we can become a secured party to the straw man debtor, and then we list the collateral that is the security for that debt. Now, like I say, in my case, the first thing I ever did in this regard was I created a state UCC1 financing statement and recorded it in my county recorders. Since that time, we've had other problems, so most people at this point in history are using the national form, but it still establishes a claim. Now, recently on this DVD, Reclaiming Your Status and Assets, we got two processes on there. Mm-hmm. One of them is an assignment of the reversionary interest, which in essence, as the settlor on the trust, we're assigning somebody else as the fiduciary trustee. In our case, in that particular process, we're doing it to the Secretary of the U.S. Department of the Treasury, which is the IMF. So that's the first part that we're doing. But on the second part, we're doing a certain authentication process, and having completed that, then we go and record an affidavit of ownership. Ownership in the form of a counter deed. And we record that. And then we send all that information to the appropriate authorities to change our status. So we're so now, you know, we're owners. We're owners of this body. We're owners of the dirt. It's not a part of this crazy Crown of Aragon trust Sesta K-Vi situation. And so that's been the direction of Solutions in Commerce for a number of years, is to get people to the point where they have control of themselves and not be victims of this Sesta K-Vi thing that started way back in the 1400s, for crying out loud, which has come down to us in our present situation through the concept of commonwealth and all these other things. See, but you have to understand the basic concepts, and this what we're showing here on the screen is such an important concept.
Right.
Get it in your mind because it's the basis for everything that follows. This is what's causing the problems, folks. This is it. Is that you're in possession of something that you don't have the legal right to. So change that.
Mm.
Change it so that you do have the legal right to it.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
We got it. Well, we've talked about this in the past. Now, those, like you said, those videos have been off. They're offline temporarily. They will be back though. But
Oh, they're online.
trying to get them.
The ones
Well,
I've talked about. Now listen.
actually, people have bootlegged the ones we've done, so you can find
Oh,
them.
you talk about the interviews.
I'm talking about our interviews where we've talked about this, and
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, that's why I want to go over a little bit more because, like I say, for those who are kind of new to the thought process, with this sale going on we got right now, there's what we call a beginner's package that would be ever so helpful to get your mind straight on some of these things.
Yeah.
You really have to. It's like,
well, I bought some of those, Winston. The packages are good because, believe me, when you're done with one, it's good to have the sequence of them there, so you can the continuity of that. If it's a package, it's good to have that.
Like I say,
and it's cheaper to do it that way.
I first started studying this stuff, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I retired in March of 1998, and I launched into a study. I've been studying this stuff for 20 years. You're getting the best use of 20 years.
Yeah. Could you take it off screen share, Winston, if you're done talking on this one slide?
Sorry.
Just if it's more than a minute or two, because then they can see.
Yeah. Well, all I'm saying is, and there's lots of people, who know these things. There's lots of people putting out information. I'm not trying to say Winston's the only guy on this planet that knows all this stuff right here, because I'm not. But I happen to be the one you're listening to today. That's what it amounts to. And so, as those who have followed us on the interviews and everything have shown, I've shown you so many different people, books, and all kinds of things. That you can go to, so you're not just listening to Winston and how he sees things. That's all. But you're listening to me today, and I'm suggesting that there is information available for you that would be fundamentally important. And one of the things that I've found, as an educator, and that's why, somebody once sent in an email to the office and said, Winston's not telling us everything he knows. And I'm not. I don't dare to. Because, when I say something, everybody hears it. And if I say something at a college level, then people who have no experience in some of these matters glom on to that, and first thing you know, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
And so that's why I try to encourage people to, get back to basics, get the basic concepts and everything down. And then, if you want to advance your knowledge, if you want to, get up a little bit higher in your levels of understanding, it's available. But you're never going to get there until you understand some of these basic concepts. Now, let's move on a little bit. I want to show some of the things that are probably causing people, a great deal of problem. It's this one here. All right. Now, again, we're going to refer to our organic law books. Organic law books. And it's not in the statutes and codes, folks. If you want to study the law, then you would study Corpus Juris Secundum or AMJUR's, America's Jurisprudence. That's where the law is. and all these statutes and codes and all this crap. That's all it is, a bunch of crap. All right. So what they're the subject matter here on in volume 89, and they give the pages here and stuff that you can go and look at. And they wanted to talk about resulting trust. Again, going back to the concept. Anytime the outcome is uncertain, a trust is formed. Okay? And what do you call that trust? Well, there's several different ways to look at it. In this particular situation right here, they're talking about what they call resulting trust. And it says, are created by operation of law. This is not common law. This is by operation of law. Remember, we talked about this when we set up that model from King James Version.
Right in the beginning of our video today. Yep.
Yeah. And so there's a situation that happens. And so the question is, if people just scratch their head and say, what just happened? And they have no idea what just happened. And it causes all kinds of turmoil and problems for them. So this discussion on resulting trust, would be helpful in understanding. So we're talking about resulting trust as they are creatures of equity and are based on the equitable doctrine concerning consideration, the doctrine that valuable consideration and not legal title determines the equitable title or interest. Again, back to that 90-10 split that we talked about.
Okay.
The valuable consideration, or in other words, the money in the bank account for the children's education. All right. That's the valuable consideration that's there. And so, so let me just read it again. Resulting trusts are created by operation of law. They are creatures of equity and are based on the equitable doctrine concerning consideration, the doctrine that valuable consideration and not legal title determines the equitable title or interest. In a trust situation where we're talking about the beneficiary, they have the possessory right to the trust asset. And that's not created by the legal title. So what they're showing here is, again, the interrelationship of a trustee versus a beneficiary situation. And it goes on to say, unlike constructive trust, resulting trusts are not remedial in character. A resulting trust is always a passive or dry trust, a mere holding of the title for the benefit of another. That's like a holding corporation.
Right.
Some people set up an LLC or a corporation simply to hold a title. That's called a dry trust because there's no asset in it. See? Okay, a resulting trust is always a passive or dry trust, a mere holding of the title for the benefit of another. No duties nor responsibilities being imposed on the trustee as to the management, control, or disposition of the property, except perhaps to convey the cesticate trust at his direction. All right. So it goes on to say resulting trust are where there is a gift by deed or will to a donee or a grantee without pecuniary consideration coming from the grantee. So let's say, for instance, the father wants to grant to the child, the family second car. So they just give it to him. And they might change the title over to the kid's name, so the kid has the responsibility for the insurance and maintenance and all that kind of thing. But no, there's been no money change hands. So dad gives the car to Junior, and Junior goes and gets the title to it and puts it in his name. That's what I was talking about here. Anyway, so without pecuniary consideration coming from the grantee, but the intention appears from the instrument itself, that the legal and beneficial estates are to be separated, and that the grantee or donee is either to enjoy no beneficial interest or only part of it. So again, like I say, this is from our organic law books. So this is not any kind of statutory or any of the rest of that foolishness. Now they get down to what's called extinction of a trust. The trustee's recognition and acknowledgement of resulting trust do not destroy it and create and express trust. Okay, so do not destroy, do not create, express trust. Where the trustee conveys the property to the beneficiary, the resulting trust is terminated. So when Junior goes and actually changes the title to his name, the resulting trust has been terminated. Okay, so it's now that's now the intent has been fulfilled. The trust collapses. The resulting trust collapses. So anyway, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this. If people would like a copy of this, like I say, this particular information was on that DVD on trust that I mentioned at the first. So you can get it that way, or if you want to send me an email and ask me for a copy of this, or you can simply go to Corpus Juris Secundum and read it in the original. So what happens in many instances is that we get involved in a resulting trust. For instance, you go and you go to the registrar and you get a copy of your birth certificate. Okay, resulting trust has been created. Now you're the trustee of the thing, and what do you do if you sign the SS5 form? I mean, you just signed right on as trustee. You just did. So all these processes that we've been talking about are to help you to reverse that, unless you want to be the trustee. Like I say, I have talked to people that did want to be the trustee.
The problem, and I think why people walk right into this without even thinking, is because we really can't do much of anything without a social security number today. You can't even, and without that birth certificate, you can't even register your kids for school and schools. This is a big problem. And so, but they all know about it. They're all going along with it and just,
That's why we have education to, so what once we know the situation is, then we can use free will to either choose to be a party of it or not to be a party of it.
Right.
That's my point. But you can't make that determination unless you know what in the heck you're dealing with. Most people would prefer to be a part of that. They would prefer to do those things. And I'm not encouraging anybody to get out of the system. I'm just saying, understand what you're dealing with. And if you don't understand what you're dealing with, you're going to be a victim.
Yeah. You're going to find out when it's too late, and then you're going to be in big trouble. And you're going to call Winston, and you're going to be like, help. And Winston's going to be like, too late. No, I know you do what you can.
Listen to the GoldFish report?
Yeah. Beam me up. Winston's going to say, beam me up.
Beam me up, Scotty. Yeah.
That's right.
Now, one of the solutions to mortgage problems is to collapse the trust if you care to. There are certain drawbacks to doing that. And that's why I have provided two different methods of dealing with deed of trust. One is revocation of deed of trust, and some people have done that. And then other people have used changing the trust so that it's favorable, so that you become the beneficiary. See, even though you're the grantor of a trust, you can also be a beneficiary of that same trust.
If you're a grantor, you can be a beneficiary?
Yes. It may be construed to be a conflict of interest to be the grantor and trustee. It may be construed that way depending on
Hmm.
on the circumstances in any event.
Hmm.
The grantor and/or settlor of a trust can be named as the beneficiary or a beneficiary of that very trust.
Yeah. It's
So,
just
so
that the
when we,
trustee never can, right? The trustee obviously never can be.
well, it can be, but it's still uh, depending on what to do. The very best scenario is leave the trustee where they are, or find a new trustee, like what we had recommended on some of those other interviews and
Hmm.
stuff.
Right.
But again, if you would prefer to collapse that trust, you can do that. You can revoke the whole trust as the grantor. Now, see, again, when these foreclosures happen, they're foreclosing on the deed of trust, not on the mortgage contract. They're not foreclosing the mortgage contract, folks. They're foreclosing the deed of trust. And so that's the problem that you get into. And if you want to go and collapse that, you can. And then there's nothing to foreclose on. Now, is it? Or if you go and correct the nature, the trust indentures of that trust, then you basically boot them out so they can't do it. Now, so again, it's ever so important to have some of these basic concepts in your mind, because if you don't, then you're going to be nothing but a victim of the system, because everything operates on trust principles, because where the outcome is uncertain, what happens?
Right. You're the
A trust
trustee.
is created. See what I mean? And like I mentioned, can you think of anything where the outcome is certain?
Not on this planet.
No, no.
Especially not right now. Not these
So
days.
doesn't that indicate that people would be well served
Mm.
to study trust and equity?
Indeed.
And
Indeed.
we can resolve every problems that people face with just those two concepts.
Mm.
And that's what we've been trying to do. That's what we've been trying to do.
Mm.
And so again, the position of myself, as I've been trying to portray as Solutions in Commerce for all these years,
Mm.
is there it's the system we have. Learn how to operate successfully within it, so that it's a benefit to you, so that you are not victimized
Right.
for lack of knowledge. Like it says in Hosea, my people perish for lack of knowledge. And if Hosea were alive today, he would say the people perish for lack of trust and equity knowledge. So let's bring Hosea up to date here a little bit, and get him on board, because again, like I say, knowledge is power,
Right.
and we're trying to empower people. And just
Absolutely.
like we talked about last time, we were trying to demonstrate to the female population that you have a natural endowment of power, but you can't exercise that power without knowledge. And so that's what we're trying to encourage. Solutions in Commerce has been an educational endeavor.
Right.
People keep calling me or asking me, can you take over this for me, or can you take over that for me? And I just say, no, I'll teach you how to do it. And
Right.
then you go and do it. Because,
Right.
Winston's already empowered. You need to be empowered. And when the people take the power to themselves, what power do the fictions have? It's lessened and lessened and lessened,
Right.
so that the people can get back in control of our destiny. That's what we're trying to do. So again, like I say, we have a few chuckles here and there and so forth, but some of this is serious.
Right,
When
sir.
your children are taken in, and they say, we're going to vaccinate, we're going to put all this crap into your children, what do you do about it?
Yeah.
Is that a dangerous situation to be in? Well, darn certain it is. I mean, you risked your life
Mm-hmm.
to bring that child into this world? Why would you turn it over to people who have bad intentions for that child? Why would you do that? And can you prevent it? You can with knowledge.
Right.
Knowledge creates power. You see what I mean? And so, like I say, as myself and many others as educators, we simply tried to bring all these things to people's attention, because we can't make any kind of change in the world, in our country, in our communities, and so forth, if we're all dumbed down.
Right.
Because then you are controlled by someone who does have the knowledge. You see.
Here we have
And
it.
so that's all. That's all. That's all I've wanted to do, is to help people to know things, bring things to their attention for self empowerment, and then once they have knowledge, and they can stand up, and then we can all stand up together. Then we can all stand up together.
Right.
And once we do that, we create a force that's to be reckoned with. Like I say, at one time I was so tickled. I watched that. There's something going on there in Ireland, some kind of foreclosure. They're going to have some kind of deal going on. If 200 or 300 people showed up and said, "Oh hell no, you're not doing that."
Well, that's what people have to do. We have to unite. We can't not, turn your cheek and look the other way, because, when it happens to you, who's going to be there for you?
Yeah.
And then no one will be there for you if you're not going to be, realizing that we are our brother's keeper.
Exactly.
We truly
So,
are.
so again, like I say, that's kind of my message today.
Yeah.
And I was given that message of empowerment through an understanding and knowledge about how trust operate and how you function within it. Now, there's a great deal more that can be said, a great deal more that can be said. And excuse me, on that particular DVD, I mean, every time I do a DVD, I always include, a lot of educational material. There's always a separate CD that has articles, has information, and not just for me. I mean, I try to bring in as many different people with as many different ideas, that, because again, some people can understand my hillbilly approach, other people can't. And so it would be better that they get information from, different sources and everything. So again, on the DVDs that I produce, then I'm a CD that has articles and places you can study, other people you can go and listen to, and all those kind of things. Because, my main goal is to get education out there. And so that's what I try to do. We've done these interviews
Oh, gosh.
time and again. How many times have I pointed to others? Say, listen, go listen to this guy, or listen to this woman over here, or whatever. Because that's my real interest. That's my real interest. Like I say, we just charge things to keep the lights on and whatnot. And I don't have to do this. I really don't. But because of my love for humanity, this is a labor of love. And so that's why we do it. So that's pretty much all I had today.
Well, thanks, Winston. We're all very grateful for your love for humanity because of what you bring to us. So we do appreciate your time. And I have to say, too, I mean, I do have several of the DVDs, and I find them very helpful because you have Winston there explaining to you on the DVD what to do. So it's really very helpful. I mean, it's much harder if we were just handed documents and we didn't understand what they meant and what we're supposed to do with them. It would be a lot harder for us to do it that way, but some may prefer it that way. I'm a visual kind of learner, and because these are concepts that sometimes are really foreign to us, really, I mean, it's enough to just realize that we've been conned through this process. That's hard enough to get your mind around, but it's also a lot to these are completely different way of thinking about things. And it's a different way so it's new information that we have to integrate. So I'm a visual kind of learner, and on the videos, and I'm not doing a commercial, but I just happen to be, I'm just telling the truth about my experience because I am a visual learner. So for me, I don't really like the black and white as much as I like simply, like, I don't like to just sit and listen to someone talk like in a lecture. I would prefer having some visuals in front of me that I can make notes on, so I don't have to write everything down, which Winston does, and he screen shares them, and they're on the DVD too. So I like it, quite honestly. If I didn't like
Yeah.
it, I wouldn't say anything, but I do happen to like them, Winston. I think they're
Well,
very
on some of our productions, we've gone to the expense and trouble to create a transcript because
yes.
people do like, you know, excuse me, they like the transcripts, the written word, so they can
Right.
carry it with them, you know, and study and stuff like that. So on some of
Yeah.
our productions, there is a transcript. On others, there's not. So you just have to look at that if that's what you would prefer.
Yeah.
But if you get the transcript,
Yeah.
also the CD comes with a transcript.
Right. Yeah, I found I do get the transcripts actually, and I do like the transcript because then I can follow along and make notes. So there are,
Yeah.
like you said, there are some things on there that that are not maybe word for word in the video. I mean, they are pretty. All the content is on the transcripts, but
Yeah. Well, on the
the,
transcript, you don't get my inflection. In other
yeah,
words, you know,
emphasizing certain.
yeah, it's just a written word
Yeah,
where you don't hear me get excited about something or emphasize certain words or
yeah,
certain concepts. So,
yeah.
yeah, but so we try
Emphasis
to
is
provide
important.
as many different things. You know, actually, it's pretty expensive to hire somebody to type up those things. You know, which we'll
Certainly
probably
is.
never recover. But you know, some people have asked for it, so we've tried to, you know, where we could afford to get it done,
Yeah.
to actually, you know, create a transcript.
We might want to tell me who that transcriptionist is so I can use him for some of my reports. So eventually, it would be nice to have all the goldfish reports on transcript at one point in the future for people.
Well,
That would be nice, but we'll talk about that later.
I don't know. I could recommend, like I said, that's handled through the office. There
Yeah,
are some people that they go to for those transcripts.
that's good.
It's pretty much a labor.
It is.
One of the problems we have with transcribers is I have to go back and re-edit them
Yeah,
because they hear me say something and and they can't spell what I say.
right,
What it
right.
amounts to, and so sometimes I have to go back and re-edit to
Yep,
make sure that the words are correct. But anyway, like I
right.
say, some people prefer that. So
Yeah,
we've
it is.
tried to, you know, not all of them are that
Right,
way,
right.
but several of them are.
But they're good. They're very helpful. And of course, our viewers who have seen our Cobra interviews know that eventually we do get transcripts out of all the interviews. And the last
Yeah.
one we don't have yet because a whole series of things happened right after that interview. Cobra's mate was passed away, and then of course we were dropped on YouTube, so we've really had our share of interference. But we'll get back. We'll get it all back. We'll get that other transcript up. And thank you, Winston. This has been a really incredible week. Who knows what's going to happen? There's so many things going on, in the world as we speak right now. Talk about uncertainty. So we are putting a lot of trust in our in President Trump right now, and he is well aware of that. So we're going to be back, folks, on Monday with another POTUS report. And just so our viewers know, what we're doing is we're publishing the POTUS reports without, I'm sorry, we are publishing the unlisted link. Okay, so you are getting the direct link, and you can only view it if you have this link. So go to our website. I'm sorry, it's not on our website. It's on our Facebook page, and it's on all the groups in Facebook that we post to. But it's clearly available on BitChute. BitChute has not censored us, thank God, on wood. So all of the reports are on the BitChute page. But we do have a new YouTube channel, and only that, that's actually, if we're publishing the POTUS reports with an unlisted link, you have to have the link to view it on YouTube. But it is available for people on YouTube. Both of these reports, all of our reports, are available on both YouTube and on BitChute as well. And we may also be going to MeWe very soon. So look for us. Actually, we have an account there already, but we haven't uploaded any videos. So folks, this is what's going on, and please keep up with us. And again, we do appreciate folks for their support, because it's viewer supported. And we need you now more than ever to keep these reports going and keep people informed for what's going on in the world right now. We have some really interesting uh, things are going on with the president. We have executive orders coming out. We have interesting news to report. You know, Jim Fetzer and I will be talking about that on Monday. So Winston, it was good to see you. Thank you so much for all this wonderful information. I hope you have a great weekend.
Yeah, it looked like it's going to be an exciting weekend. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, that's wonderful. I hope it is. I hope so. So I want to thank you, Winston. We'll see you next week with another episode of Country Roads. And until then, I hope our viewers have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. And this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.